Hello and welcome to Matt and Mike Paul Focus. I'm Mike.
And I'm not.
And it's Halloween time. Happy Halloween, everybody. Woo! Yeah, spooky season is upon us.
I feel simply ghoulish, Michael.
Oh, I bet you do. You look it too.
Okay.
And
Bully.
Bully. And it is around about this time that we try and give out a few recommendations about scary films to watch around this season to get you into the Halloween mood. So here we have 3 each of films that we've seen over the past year or so that we would highly recommend. So Matt, would you like to kick us off with your first?
Yes, I would like to talk about 2005's Wolf Creek.
Oh, good choice.
It's not necessarily a very unknown movie. It's fairly popular, and there's been plenty of sequels and even a TV series, 2 series of which have been made. But I just think it's, the original doesn't get talked about enough. I think it's a fantastic modern horror film, and, it is still definitely one of my favourite horrors of the last couple of decades. Like, it's just a wonderful, wonderful experience. It's incredibly tense, and it takes its time. It builds the suspense really, really well. But when you actually get down to the nuts and bolts of it, it fucking delivers.
It's very visceral as well.
Very, very visceral.
Gruesome in parts, isn't it?
Yeah, it's basically about these 3
tourists.
They're kind of like, one of them's English, the other 2 Australian. Or is it 2? Yeah, they're basically backpackers. Yeah, they're kind of like, they're thrill seekers having a good time. And they're going, and they're sort of looking for this Wolf Creek meteor crater, which is in the middle of the outback.
Yeah, it's a real place, isn't it?
Yeah, it really exists. Yeah, which is nuts like that. I remember that was one of the sort of big discoveries of the movie. I was like, oh my god, that place is amazing. Why have I never heard of this? And they make their way there in a shitty car, and they get there, and once they've explored the crater and you got to know the characters a little bit, they're all arseholes as well, which I love. You don't really feel much of a connection to any of them. They're all just kind of sort of selfish, slightly snarky kind of people, and then their car doesn't start on the return to the car park, and there's no one else around for hundreds and hundreds of miles, and then Mick Thompson shows up, who is probably one of the most memorable villains
definitely in the past few decades, I'd say.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's played by an actor called John Jarratt. And he turns up and he's a sort of Crocodile Dundee, happy-go-lucky Australian, outback guy.
Yeah.
And then that turns out it could not be further from the truth. And I think that's the switcheroo is that you're so charmed by this guy, you think he can't possibly be the villain. When I remember watching it for the first time, I thought, there's going to be another switch coming where it's going to be someone else who's the killer or what have you. But he basically takes them back to his compound in the middle of nowhere, drugs them all, and they wake up one by one. And the sort of story is told by from the perspective of each one of the victims, which is really cool. So as they wake up, it's sort of like the camera's with them, and it turns out that this Mick is an absolute homicidal psychopath, who's basically been killing tourists for years and years and years, and stealing their vehicles, murdering them one by one. And he actually makes a joke at one point that he's a kangaroo killer because they're everywhere now like tourists, so it's my duty to get rid of them.
Yeah.
The music is fantastic. It's a really melancholy score that goes with these, super, this extreme violence. The way Mick dispatches some of our heroes. The movie is so dark, but it's also brilliantly comically funny as well.
It does have a streak of black comedy all the way through it, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah, he's a quipper. He likes to quip when he's doing it. But there's also tremendous kind of it kind of is reminiscent of another film I'm going to talk about, like The Hitcher, in terms of these really long outback roads, and you get the feeling of absolute isolation.
Yeah, the location scouting that they did for it is absolutely brilliant. I mean, obviously, it's real Wolf Creek itself.
Yeah, it's a real environment, and it is true, and it flashes up these facts. Yeah, at the beginning and at the end that people do go missing in Australia and they're never seen again, under mysterious circumstances, and there's lots of unsolved missing persons cases in Australia, and and it is loosely based on a real case of a man who was brought in for questioning about the murders of several people but was never convicted. So it's just a fantastic standalone. That the sequels are decent, the series was fun, but the first one for me is now a classic horror film. I think it's in my top 10 horrors of all time for sure.
So you'd recommend the entire series? And
yeah, the second one grew on me. The first time I watched it, I wasn't best impressed, but on repeat viewing, it's it's got a lot going for it. It's really fun. It's different enough. It's got like different sort of settings and some different set pieces and stuff. Mick's just brilliant. It's great to watch, isn't he?
Yeah,
At the end of the day, John Jarrett's a fantastic actor, and there's 2 seasons of the show as well. The first season I think is better than the second. The second gets a little bit kind of repetitive, and so I don't think it's going for a third. But I think there is a third movie coming out next year.
I had heard that, yeah. So that's going to be very interesting to see. I'm going to have to watch Wolf Creek 2 to catch up with the story. I suppose. It's definitely worth a watch. Wolf Creek 2. Yeah, it's got some fantastic moments in it and some extremely violent gore, which is great. Right up your alley.
Yeah, check it out, guys.
So my first recommendation is the Netflix film Apostle.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I love that one. That was great.
Yeah? Such big Wicker Man vibes all the way through it.
Yeah, what would they call a folk horror movie?
Yes, definitely a folk horror movie. It's directed by Gareth Evans, who did The Raid and The Raid 2. He's a Welsh director who went across to Indonesia and filmed those films.
A Welsh guy made The Raid?
Yeah, Welsh guy made The Raid and The Raid 2, yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah, exactly. So he's a really good action director, but this kind of takes the action out of it, and it's very much a creeping dread film all the way through. It's set
my favourite type of horror, basically. Yeah,
exactly.
That's definitely up my street.
Yeah, it's set in the early 1900s, and Dan Stevens from The Guest and Downton Abbey, he travels to this remote Welsh kind of island community in the same way that Edward Woodward did in The Wicker Man. Basically, he's trying to find his sister, who's been potentially kidnapped and ransomed by this island community because their crops are failing. They're needing some money to survive, and he has to go undercover as one of the new recruits to this cult community, try and find his sister, get her out of there as soon as he can. When he does get there, he finds out that not everything is as it seems. There's a more serious threat at the heart of this, and it's more supernatural in nature as well. But you have Michael Sheen and as one of the leaders of this community, and he just chews the scenery in every scene he's in. Absolutely fantastic performance by him. It's such a weird kind of atmosphere of the film. Like, it kind of comes out of nowhere, but like when it does, it is very intense, like the supernatural elements.
It's one of these movies that if you didn't know that there was a supernatural element coming, even though it's apparent from all the trailers and the advertising,
our review of it now,
and our spoilers, but you wouldn't necessarily know it. It'd be great to show it to somebody not knowing anything and see where it was, not know where it was going, because it's a bit like Kill List. Have you seen Kill List?
No, but I want to. I know it's Ben Wheatley's first, and like there is a bit of a thing to it, which no one spoiled the twist.
Yeah,
for me yet,
yeah. So. Just knowing there's a twist is annoying, but there is somewhat some twists and turns in that are completely unexpected, but work really, really well.
But in terms of Apostle, there is such, like I said, the creeping dread all the way through. When it gets to the end, and the town kind of succumbs to a bit of mania, and like torture devices come out, and people die in horrific ways. That it's going to stick with me for a long time, but in a way that I really didn't expect and that blew me away. And I went into it thinking, oh god, it's a Netflix original. It's going to probably be just pretty okay. But then like the fact that Gareth Evans is behind it, Michael Sheen at the helm of it, Dan Stevens does a really decent job of it as well. But at the end of it, I just came out thinking I need to recommend this to as many people as can see it. So if you haven't seen Apostle, I highly recommend
check it out. So my next choice is the 1986 thriller The Hitcher. And there's a little backstory to this that I've got to say, because it's one of my best friend, Mark. He was talking about this film for years and years and years, and he would constantly reference it as we were sort of growing up, and I'd never seen it, and I think he'd caught it on late night Channel 5 or something like that, back in the day, and it had really stuck with him. And then so finally, in about 2011, we got round to watching it for the first time. And it was one of these movies where my expectations weren't that high, because I thought, what could be so great about this kind of action thriller that I haven't seen before? But what is wonderful about it is it kind of transcends the horror genre and the action genre at the same time. It kind of straddles both. It starts off as this kind of two-hander where like Rutger Hauer and C. Thomas Howell are in the car basically, and he picks him up. He picks him up as he's hitchhiking. And he's pretty sinister, like to begin with. There's no doubt, there's something weird going on, but you have no idea what this guy's capable of. And then, it kind of transcends, into this crazy kind of revenge thriller, but with supernatural elements, mystery elements, and then insane action set pieces that I just did not expect at all. And I remember as soon as like the police helicopter started coming, it turned into something like Terminator 2, and I would turn to Mark and just went, I can't believe how amazing this film is. I thought it was going to be good because you recommended it to me, but it absolutely blew my mind. And as I said, it's the best of both. It's an action, horror, thriller. You know, it's just absolutely fantastic.
A great mix of all three. Yeah.
A great mix of all three that I don't think has ever really been achieved by any other movie. I can't think of anything else. Perhaps Aliens, in the way it's like an action sci-fi horror.
Nick Cage Wicker Man, by any chance?
Nick Cage's Wicker Man, of course. That goes without saying. Yeah. Not the bees! Not the bees! Yeah, it's an absolutely unique film. It's super cool, super violent. It's really terrifying at times and amazing action. So yeah, check it out. I
definitely will. So on the same trend of evil waiting for you in nature in the woods, I'm going to recommend my second one, The Ritual. This one was a small British kind of independent film that came out in cinemas, had like a very limited run, but it was one of the best films of the year when it first came out. I think it was like 2018, 2017. Basically, it's a stag do that goes on their stag do without the stag, because the stag dies, unfortunately, before it can actually, they can go and do it.
Oh my god! So they know this when they go. That's the twist. That's
like the film starts with them like talking about maybe going on it. They go into a store. He's a victim of a robbery and unfortunately dies. So the rest of the stag do goes on the trip that he wanted to go on to Sweden, hiking through Swedish forests, and that is their ritual that they're planning on doing it every year on the anniversary of his death.
Right.
But then when they go there, obviously it's the Swedish forests. There's something creepy going to be in it. It's a horror film, and
a lot of folk horror in our choices here today.
It works with me. What can I say? And they start like hallucinating things. They feel like they're going a bit mad. But then some of the creature design of what actually does come and terrorize them is some of my favorites I probably have ever seen.
Wow. Okay.
The title becomes a bit of a play on words in terms of they become almost try to be sacrificed to this entity that lives in the forest, and they become the ritual whilst going on this ritual of their own.
Right,
so it's a bit of a play on words. It's based on a novel, I believe.
Is it Timothy Spall's son, Rafe
Spall?
Yeah.
Rafe Spall is the lead actor.
I like him actually. I've got to say, like he's not always cast very well. I think sometimes he gets put in these kind of roles that aren't best suited. However, I think he is a really great actor,
like Prometheus or Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom.
Oh yes. yeah. He's just not. He's not that guy. Like I don't think he gets cast correctly, but there is movies when he plays like I think he's a very good actor, and I think he's very believable.
He's a very good everyman, I'd say.
Yeah, this feels like a good. I've not seen the film, but this feels like a good role for him. Do you think he's cast right in this one?
He is cast so well because he gets across the internal struggle of the main character, because his entire thing is that he feels like he has to go on this because he didn't intervene in his friend's death. Like he could have prevented it, but he was too much of a coward.
So he's going in with guilt.
Yes, he's going in with guilt. He sees hallucinations of this event happening again and again, but in a way that they do it so like it was a convenience store or like a liquor store that it happens in, but then like they're in the middle of the forest and suddenly there's a liquor store in the middle of the forest, and it's done all practically, and it's done in such a way that is just very visually appealing, visually striking. And yeah, towards the end when it gets a bit too intense and like a bit more supernatural, then very, very visually striking as well. It's got Robert James Collier, who's also from Downton Abbey. I'm on a Downton Abbey actor recommendation kick, it seems as well. But yeah, it's essentially friends go hiking in Sweden and it doesn't go well, but it is done so damn well that I would highly recommend you watch it.
I'm going to check that out, dude, because I didn't have high expectations for it, but hearing you talk about it now, yeah, I'm on it.
I think you'd like it.
My third choice is, I wanted to save my funnest choice to last, is a rare sequel that is... Yeah, I'm not going to say it's better than the original, but it's different enough that it makes it very interesting. And considering it's by the same director as the original, it's pretty fascinating. It's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Okay.
Have you ever seen this film?
I've seen the first. I have not seen the sequel.
So I caught this on. I knew Texas Chainsaw like as pretty much as long as I can remember. It's just got better and better with age. This film came on Film 4 Extreme back in the day, and I had no idea it was Tobe Hooper who did it, because the recording I had, I started recording a bit late on a VHS tape, so I didn't have the opening credit crawl.
Back in the day.
Yeah, so I had no idea it was Tobe Hooper who directed it. So it's the same director as the original, nearly 10 years after the original.
Really? That was how big the gap was?
I think it might be more, actually.
Yeah, Texas Chainsaw was 1974, 76?
74.
Yeah, 74, yeah.
So it's 12 years after the fact, which is crazy.
Damn.
To think. I mean, I don't know where to start, really. It's a brilliant sequel, but it's tonally, it amps up the comedy, the super black comedy vibes of the original, which there was some in the original Texas Chainsaw, but it was so difficult to see through the sort of trauma of the events that was going on.
Yeah.
In this, they really ramp up the family dynamic, the Size family, and it's about a radio DJ who one night records a murder they're having a live phone into the radio station, and these two yuppie kids get chainsawed in half as they're calling through on their car phone to the studio. That then brings in investigator Dennis Hopper, who is the uncle of the kids who got murdered in the first one.
Oh, right. Okay.
So it is a direct sequel.
There's some continuation to the story.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it goes from there, and then the Sawyer family, which is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre family, basically come to haunt the studio and hunt down and kill Stretch, who was the lady who played the tape, and then Dennis Hopper comes to her rescue, and it all basically goes from there, and then it descends into this like super darkly funny. I can only put it on the level of something like Brain Dead, Peter Jackson's Brain Dead, in terms of extreme blood and gore, as well as and it's a laugh a minute at the same time. There's loads of visual gags in there, but it's definitely got the creepy vibes of the original one. And some of the set design at the end, like this sort of the Sawyer family have taken up. They've sort of taken to hiding in this underground theme park. So it's kind of like it's something, I don't know, it's something out of a nightmare. It's like old theme park rides in this kind of fake underground cave with loads of like Christmas lights hanging up, and crazy things, and bodies everywhere. Sculptures of bones lying around the place, and Grandpa's still alive somehow and sucking blood from people's fingers, and it's brilliant. It's really, really great. And Gunnar Hansen doesn't come back to play Leatherface. There's a different actor playing Leatherface and a different actor playing the hitchhiker, aka Chop Top. But it's the original cook, the guy who plays the sort of the dad of the family, is back, and it's Dennis Hopper. I think it was just the same year as he was in Blue Velvet, so it's kind of level of insanity as well. And he's wielding chainsaws in acts of revenge. It's amazing.
That sounds mad.
It's absolutely amazing. I can't, it's one of these sequels that no one really talks about, but it's a fucking brilliant sequel.
So that's like more if you want like an exhilarating ride rather than being scared, would you say?
Yeah, it's not super, what's the word, like, moody or atmospheric. It's all like everything is like ramped up to 11. Right, okay. But it's brilliant. It's sort of Aliens to Alien, basically.
Okay, yeah.
That's probably a good way of looking at it.
Nice. And my final recommendation and the last one of this episode is going to be about The Empty Man. Have you heard of The Empty Man?
I have not.
Well, it's directed by David Pryor, who, in doing research for this, I found was the producer on most of David Fincher's films. So he's got a very...
Going back to Seven and...
Yeah. He did Zodiac, he did Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Social Network, places like that.
Alien 3.
I don't think he did Alien 3, unfortunately. Sorry, Matt. But
1 second, let me take it off my...
Oh, yep. Got to get the... The bingo card has now been struck off. So, essentially, The Empty Man is a horror film about... In the same kind of tropes of, like, in The Ring, when Naomi Watts is trying to investigate the legend behind the killer videotape.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing about this kind of private detective trying to figure out why, I think it's his friend's daughter has died. She participated in this ritual of blowing a empty bottle near a bridge, and that summons the Empty Man.
Whoa!
And
see, this sounds shit.
Yeah, exactly. It's
not shit.
It's very stereotypical in its setup.
Yeah.
But in its delivery, it is very, very unique and something that really struck with me in terms of, this one's going to be rubbish and something I can put on in the background too. I can't turn away from this because I need to find out what happens.
It's great when that happens, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
It happened with me in The Terrifier the other day. If anyone's seen that, that's a great shout. But anyway, starts off shit. Stick with it.
Yeah, exactly. But this one doesn't even start off shit. This one starts about 20 minutes into, like, it has a little short film before the even opening titles or the Empty Man is seen, where, you know, you have like a bit of a cold open, and you find out like, oh, people become victims of the monster, and then it cuts to our main character and they discover the monster for themselves.
Yeah.
When these people go hiking up a mountain and then they discover this like really old cabin and they get haunted by this monster, it takes its time so much that like it could finish and that would be a short film in itself, and it would be very, very effective. And then it cuts to our main character of James Badge Dale, who you may recognize from like Iron Man 3 or 24 or even The Departed.
Get him up now, but carry on.
Yeah. And it does it so well because it starts like investigating like a bit of a cult following that this Slender Man kind of character of the Empty Man has, and it goes into more kind of...
Oh yeah, I recognise him. Yeah, got him up.
Yeah, he's got a very he's like always. Oh, he's that guy from that thing. Yeah.
He's that guy from the thing. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And yeah, so he does a really good job of being like a bit of an everyman in terms of he's starting to investigate this kind of cult that's surrounding the Empty Man, and he has very realistic reactions to what he's seeing. He sees like people like sacrificing stuff, burning a cross, all like chanting around a big bonfire, and then like they all turn and look at him, and he's like, "Oh fuck this," and he gets out of there. He doesn't like investigate more.
It's that natural reaction of like what you would do. Like,
he is a very good avatar for the viewer.
Well, it's great in movies like in horror films where, you know, people do things that, you know, you can sort of get out of something, you know, you can sort of lose faith in something quite easily when, you know, characters do things that you just would not do in real life.
Investigate the basement in the dark and stuff like that. It's like, why don't you turn on the lights? He makes sure like he turns on all the lights. He is that kind of guy. And
you relate to him totally.
Not only do you relate to him, but I just appreciated the fact that it goes against the tropes like that.
And it sounds a bit like Candyman in the relates, you know, in terms of the sort of investigating, is it almost like urban legends in that respect?
It is in a way, in terms of, he's trying to investigate why someone did what they did and like the origins of it, and go into further detail into the organization behind it and the cult following of something. I keep saying it, but still. And it gets to a point where at the end it touches on such a psychological kind of concept that I found it so interesting that I did some more research, and it turns out that it is like based on real thoughts and real people thinking that. Well, I'm not going to spoil it, but it is definitely worth it just in terms of how unique it is, I find. And it's produced and directed in such a way that it's very visually striking. The transitions from one scene to another are handled in such a professional way that it just constantly made me go, wow, that was such a great transition. Or just like, wow, I didn't even notice that had happened. Or the production into like certain creepy artifacts that are found in like caves. Like there's a skeleton that's found with like 12 fingers on each hand, and it's done in such a realistic kind of way that if you would find it, you'd be like, oh my god, what the fuck is that? And it's done so believably well that it's creeping dread, it's creeping horror, it's subtle, it's not in your face, and it's more about the idea of like scary concepts and ideas than it is about, oh, the boogeyman's coming to get you. In the same way that like something like Jacob's Ladder would be, like kind of psychological horror.
Oh, you sold me on that one. That just sounds amazing.
I'd highly recommend.
Is this on Netflix? This one, do you know?
I believe it's on Amazon Prime.
Right, okay, cool.
But yeah, if you can find it out, I definitely recommend it because it is one of the best ones I've seen in the last few years.
Is it even better than The Bye-Bye Man?
The Bye-Bye Man. We will need an entire episode to discuss The Bye-Bye Man and why it fails as a film, because my god.
If people listen to the Candyman episode of Matt and Mike Pull Focus, you'll know that Mike introduced me to the abomination of The Bye-Bye Man.
Abomination is a good word for it. Yeah.
I did actually watch it after we made that episode all those years ago, and it's so shit.
It's baffling, isn't it?
It's bafflingly shit.
Yeah.
You know, it's like these things you watch. It's a bit like The Fanatic with John Travolta, but it's not even like so bad it's good. Like The Fanatic, it's
so bad,
just
it's bad.
Boring and lame and stupid.
It just fails in its attempts to. This isn't a review of The Bye-Bye Man now, but like it just fails in creating a creature. Yeah. Like it tries to set up rules and then doesn't follow them. Yeah. It gives you like jump scares that your eye isn't even on. You know, it brings focus to the wrong part of the screen. It brings
jump scares that you're not even looking at. Yeah.
And it's so shit. So
like Candyman meets Hepatitis B.
Yeah, exactly. And if you want like a good excuse to get drunk and watch a shit film, Bye Bye Man, that's a recommendation for you. It's like The Room, but of horror films.
It's not even like as entertaining as The Room, is
No,
it?
not at all.
But yeah, that's it's bafflingly bad. Check it out.
So don't watch the Bye Bye Man. Watch the Empty Man instead. That's a much better version of like a Slender Man kind of creepypasta brought to life, but in an interesting way that talks about concepts and ideas. Yeah, a thinking man's Bye Bye Man.
There you go.
So that's 6 scary film recommendations from Matt and myself. If you have any scary films that you'd recommend that we haven't mentioned, please feel free to write them in the comment section down below. If you'd like to hear more from us, subscribe to our channel and be sure to like this video as it really helps with the YouTube algorithm. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Twitch, now by searching for the name Matt and Mike Pull Focus. Say Happy Halloween, Matt.
Happy Halloween, Matt.
And that's Happy Halloween from me too. Happy Halloween, everybody. Woo!